This is Indian Country Today.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Trahant. Here are the headlines from Indian Country Today. Congress meets Wednesday to count the votes from the Electoral College. Normally, the process is ceremonial, but that's not the case in the era of Donald Trump. At a rally in Georgia, the president called on Vice President Mike Pence to ignore precedent and the electoral votes from swing states that did not vote for Trump.
And I hope Mike Pence comes through for us, I have to tell you. I hope that our great vice president comes through for us. He's a great guy. Of course, if he doesn't come through, I won't like him quite as much. No, Mike is a great guy. He's a wonderful man and a smart man and a man that I like a lot. But he's going to have a lot to say about it. And you know one thing with him, you're going to get straight shots. He's going to call it straight.
One of the states being challenged by Trump is Nevada. The Trump campaign has stated that the Get Out the Vote efforts for the Native American community were illegal because T-shirts and food were given away. However, Jacqueline De Leon, an attorney for the Native American Rights Fund, dismissed that complaint. She said, "It turns out a lot of their claims are unsubstantiated." Then the Washington bureau chief for the Associated Press, Julie Pace, said that a common thread is misinformation.
I think that every time that there is an objection, it really does open the door for more misinformation to be spread about the state of the results in those states. Because what we know is that the results have been certified, again, by many Republican officials in these states. They were free and fair elections, and yet you're going to see a real effort to cast them as otherwise on the 6th.
Each House of Congress must vote on every Electoral College challenge. Georgine Lewis is hoping to win her party's nomination to run in a special election in New Mexico. Lewis is Acoma Pueblo and announced her candidacy to replace Deb Haaland, who is Laguna Pueblo.
I want to prove that what happened with Representative Haaland is not a fluke. Native Americans can run for office. We can show our strengths and demonstrate our experiences, our education, and bring that to the table to fight for our constituents.
While Haaland just won her second term in Congress, she is also President-elect Joe Biden's choice for Interior Secretary. Senate confirmation hearings for Haaland will begin in February. Once that process takes place and she's sworn into office, then the state of New Mexico will hold a special election to fill her seat. Lewis faces two other Democrats who are also vying to get the party's nomination, a decision that will be made behind closed doors. Both the Republican and Independent parties will also select one candidate to run in the special election. Lewis is serving her 5th term in the New Mexico House. She's believed to be the first Pueblo woman to be elected to the state's legislature. The special election date will likely be held in the spring. Congress is getting high praise for passing 3 bills aimed at improving health care for Native American veterans. The National Indian Health Board issued a statement in late December saying the bills will help improve and coordinate health care for Native veterans. The Native American Veterans PACT Act eliminates copayments for American Indian and Alaska Native veterans who seek treatment through the VA system. Veteran Affairs Tribal Advisory Committee Act of 2019 will establish a VA Tribal Advisory Committee to improve communication between the tribes and the VA. And finally, the PRC for Native Veterans Act amends the Indian Healthcare Improvement Act to make clear both the VA and the Department of Defense will reimburse the Indian Health Service and tribal-run health programs for services for Native veterans that they receive through an authorized referral. As healthcare workers start to get the coronavirus vaccine, one tribe is placing its highest priority on those who speak the Dakota and Lakota languages fluently. The Standing Rock Sioux tribe is located in Fort Yates, North Dakota. The tribal chairman, Mike Faith, told KXNet News that protecting those speakers is about keeping tribal customs alive. He says there are an estimated 300 people who speak the L and D dialects fluently out of the 8,000 tribal citizens. Once those speakers get vaccinated this week, the next phase of vaccines will go to elders, law enforcement officers, tribal courts, and then tribal school employees. And those are the headlines from Indian Country today. I'm Mark Trahant. We'll be right back. Sports teams aren't the only things getting a name change at the request of Native Americans. In South Dakota, Harney Peak is now Black Elk Peak. And in Minnesota, Lake Calhoun is now Bde-Makaska. And now Henry Sibley High School in Mendota Heights will change its name. After Sibley served one term as Minnesota governor, he led a military campaign against the Dakota people in 1862. His military commission sentenced 303 Dakota men to death, but President Abraham Lincoln commuted the majority of the sentences. Still, 38 Dakota men were hanged at Mankato, marking the largest mass execution in United States history. Sibley High School's board also removed 2 books from their curriculum: Steinbeck's 1937 book of Mice and Men and Larry Watson's Montana in 1948, published in 1993. Joining us to talk about Minnesota's growing awareness of Native American cultural concerns are Alicia Wakow Butler, American Indian Cultural Liaison at Independent School District 197, and Carly Bad Hartbull, the Executive Director of Native Ways Federation. Welcome, Alicia. Let's start with your work at Sibley High School and the Parents Committee. Tell us what the school board's decision, how did it get to this point?
Well, it's been a long time coming. I've been working in the school district for about 3 years, and it's been something that the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee has always wanted. But we got more of the community backing, that is the non-Native community backing in the school district area. And a recent person who's an alumni of the school took it on and really moved forward with it. And I'm just really glad that it's here and it's come, because I think our administration has been always in full support, but really wanted the community support as well to change the name.
It must be incredible being a parent and having your child go to the school every day and seeing these names kind of almost in your face.
Yeah, there's actually been a lot of parents that I've worked with that live in this school district, but would commute farther to take their child somewhere else because they didn't want to have their child go with that high school name, even on their diploma, or just thinking about the hurt that it's caused their family.
Carly, congratulations on being named one of the Attorneys of the Year by the Minnesota Lawyers. I understand this was to acknowledge your family's work to get Lake Calhoun renamed.
That's right. It was almost over 5 years ago, but it was an effort that took almost 5 years to completion, where our family, brought together the community. We reached out to Native and non-Native folks, and we're able to make this change. We're able to not just change the name of Lake Calhoun, but restore the Dakota name of Bde-Makaska.
How have attitudes changed in the Twin Cities, or are they changing for Native Americans, especially after the murder of George Floyd in May?
It's interesting because we're seeing a lot more conversations around racial justice and equity. And the Bde-Makaska name restoration, this is something a few years ago, this was before George Floyd was killed. This was an equity recommendation that was made from the public to government entities, saying that, this is something we want. We live in an incredibly divisive society. We did then, we do now. And during COVID and post-COVID, this is an issue that we're dealing with, right? So many of our issues are directly connected to the disconnect between people from one another and from the land. And this effort of Bde-Makaska is something that brought people together around a common love for place. When we worked on this, we reached out and we brought together people from all backgrounds and demographics, Native, white, Black, immigrant, you name it. And when we told them the story of John Calhoun and the story of Dakota people and presence here, they told us that in order for equitable changes to take place, in order for them to feel welcome here, that we needed to not just remove the name of Calhoun, but restore its Indigenous name. People wanted to know the Indigenous stories of this place. And now, as we're living in this time of so many changes happening, where George Floyd was killed not very far from where I'm standing today, just blocks from where I live. Across the country, these conversations around racial justice and equity, they're happening more and more. And the importance of what these words mean, how they show up in policies and in everyday practices. This is all really, really important work, and there's a lot of work to be done. But the fact that efforts that are taking hold, such as Badema-Kuska, such as what happened with Sibley, with the school, it's all connected. It's all related. People are fed up. People want the truth. Native people and people of color in particular have been advocating for these changes for generations. And we're in a time right now where there's a shift happening. People are finally listening. They're starting to pay attention. People who maybe weren't listening before, who didn't have the same understanding before of these connections. And so while there's a lot of work yet to be done, we are seeing some waves in the dominant narratives about us. We're seeing some waves take place, and these efforts show that there's a lot of opportunity for more of this work to take hold in the future.
I'm curious about neighbors in the community and whether they not are actually looking at this new with fresh eyes and being inspired by the possibility of these kinds of changes and really the idea of a more equitable society.
I certainly hope so. When we started, again, over 5 years ago, we had virtually, almost no support. We had very little support. My sister, Dr. Kate Bean, and I were tasked with coming up with some recommendations for the park board around changes that were going to happen around the lakes. And when we started this work, we came to the table, two of the first Native people that had been at this kind of table, for one, and we talked right away about the importance of the name restoration and how this was an equity issue. And when we started this conversation, at that time, people were not on board. For the most part, in particular at park board level and beyond, they didn't see this as an important issue. They didn't see the significance of a name restoration. They didn't see the significance or the connection between the name and equity. And what happened is over time, over multiple years of us sharing our stories, telling people about our family's connection to this place, telling people our stories, bringing our kids to meetings, and not just because, not just because we wanted to, but in fact, because we had to, because we were working moms, but bringing our kids to meetings where they taught them how to say Badema-Kuska, where they told them about why this was an important issue for them, we started to see hearts and minds shift. And so that's something that I feel optimistic that there is more opportunity for this kind of change in the future. Having gone through this experience where, again, initially we didn't have support. We didn't have the park board support when we first started. And at the end of almost 2 years of public engagement, we walked away with a unanimous vote from the park board to support the name restoration. And they were the ones who filed the petition with the county, which set things off along the path, which eventually led to the official name change, name restoration.
Alicia, is this similar with the parents? Are they going through the same thought process?
I say it's very similar since we've been talking about it in our APAC committee. And then, I think just discussions in the community and the awareness that we are here in this community. We're not, a zero number. And when I first started working in this school district, they said that we had 74 American Indian students, and now we're up to 148. And that's not just because, they're they're being recognized. We've always been here, but their ethnic coding was wrong. And now with my advocacy, our American Indian families are actually getting the recognition and support through the educational system that they deserve.
Is there any divide between parents and students? Do young people see this differently than their parents?
I haven't seen it so much that the parents are different with the students, but that more households kind of have a different idea, and they kind of battle one another in ways of misunderstanding. But the students have, when I talked with them, I was able to go into all the 10th grade schools classrooms to talk about the book and why we stopped it and request that it be stopped. A lot of the kids were like, okay, yeah, we understand, we get it. So we heard from some parents that were upset, but then one in particular, she was inquiring and she said, okay, I completely yield, because if this is from the American Indian community and they've got these concerns, then I don't have any problem with that. So I appreciate that understanding.
What about the new name? Do you have any idea what this high school will become?
No clue yet. There's going to be a committee drawn up, and I'm going to advocate to be on that committee, as well as some other American Indian parents. But one thing I've heard is that they'd like it to be about like more of the location instead of after somebody in particular. So, I mean, we'll see. You never know what will come out in the end, but I'm sure something will happen fairly soon, because we just had a renovation done on the high school. And so they're probably anxiously waiting to put up the name of what it will be.
That's interesting that it would be a place, because there's so many heroes that could be identified that from our past, certainly, that would be worthy of such honor.
That's true. That's true. There was someone from the committee, or the parent committee, that said, well, us as Dakota people, we didn't name things after people, but after places. And so I don't know if that's where that originated from. So I know people felt maybe more comfortable with that because of the controversy that has happened with Henry Sibley, but we'll see.
Very good. Well, thank you both. And I think this will be a larger national conversation in communities across the country. So thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
We'll be right back. Joining us now to talk about the new Congress is Jordan Bennett-Begay, our Deputy Managing Editor. Thank you, Jordan, for joining us.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me.
You know, before we start talking about the new Congress, let's go back 2 years. I remember what it was like, the excitement when the new Congress came into town just 2 years ago. And you were, I think, wandering all over Capitol Hill for that.
Yeah, I do remember that. At first I was like thinking, wow, it's already been 2 years. It did feel like just yesterday. And I remember the excitement. I mean, before it was, a time before masks and social distancing. So there are a lot of tribal leaders walking around, and just even Native people walking around on the Hill, wanting to, meet Deb and Sharice. And the halls where their offices were just full of people, and people dressed in their traditional wear. And I thought that was the coolest thing to see, was just people wanting to, don their best dress and just talking to people and saying hi and just visiting. It kind of felt like, I felt like I was back at home. But it was also in the congressional halls. And so I think it made it a little more comfortable and easy for people to meet Deb, and just to see the chaos that was going in their media, just trying to say hi, take pictures, and interview her and Sharice. It was just a time to remember. And I can't believe it's been 2 years, and now they're already, sworn in again. And it's a different time. It was done on a Sunday. We weren't able to be there. So I think we're very fortunate to be there 2 years ago.
Yeah, in fact, I mean, like everyone, you were watching this one on a monitor. The pandemic has changed everything. In the Senate, only a few people at a time were sworn in. In the House, They had to really take pretty stringent measures as they swore people in. I was struck, though, by how optimistic, even through this challenge, both the new members, all 6 of them, were in their statements about the swearing in. So even then, it's a time of new beginnings.
It is, and very, being very innovative and still trying to engage their constituents and people just across the country. And like I said, it's just, I always thought of this pandemic as just a time for a lot of people to innovate. So it's exciting to see where, these congressional members will go from here in the country as in the world as a whole too.
So your office is right on the metro, and it's near the White House, but just a short train ride away from Capitol Hill. How are you going to try to cover this Congress and administration? You're going to have a lot going on in a very short period of time.
Yeah. So I just want people to know I'm in Mexico now, but my office is in DC. It's going to be really interesting. I think a lot of it's just going to be a lot of coordinating and just talking to people and seeing what is possible, because I know safety is a precaution for everyone, or it's the most important thing right now for everyone. So that's very respected at this time. But I mean, we try to make the best of Zooms and just seeing what event, because people are having socially distanced events, and just seeing where that is now. I think the vaccine also makes it a little more possible, but still, there are safety measures that still have to be taken since the vaccine is here.
So much of the policy issues are going to be partly about undoing really some of the actions from the last 4 years, as well as coming up with new ones, especially with the pandemic, trying to both invigorate the healthcare regime and the economy.
Mm-hmm. And environmental policies too, right? And I think that's what this whole Senate runoff election is going to determine, right? That's happening today. Voters in Georgia will be, voting in 2 state Senate runoff elections. And if Democrats gain those 2 seats, it's going to be Vice President-elect Kamala Harris who's going to be the tiebreaker. And, that's going to determine who controls the Senate and who makes, what laws get passed and whatnot.
And I mean, really, I think people don't understand how much power the majority leader in the Senate has, because unlike the House, the majority leader really can control the agenda. And if the majority leader doesn't want something to even come up for a vote, it never happens.
Right. And then, so Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell will still have control there. So, I mean, I think that's what it's going to be a really tough. President-elect Joe Biden is going to really be in a tough position in trying to push his progressive agenda, him and his whole cabinet, right? So I think even thinking about like maybe Deb Haaland, who is a nominee for Interior Secretary, she might have a little bit of a rough time trying to, push through tasks that she wants to get done for herself and the rest of the cabinet too.
Well, and she said that climate change is going to be a huge priority, and so many entrenched interests in Washington push back against that agenda, whether it be folks who lay pipelines to those who continue to do oil and gas extraction.
Yeah, well, that's definitely right. Even, right now you have the Enbridge pipeline that's going on in north of the country. There's just so many other pipeline fights that are going on. I think there's one south of the country too, but I know Enbridge is going to be one that could be, people are potentially saying could be the next Standing Rock right now. And so that's going to be, I think, one of the big projects that is going to be happening for the interior and for environmental groups and Native people.
Over the years, you've covered a lot on healthcare policy, and as we've seen the vaccine rollout, it seems almost from afar that tribes are ahead of the rest of the country. And I only say that because what's going on with the vaccine rollout in the rest of the country is not all that great.
No, they kind of had like a rough start. It's been slower, but I've been reading it did catch up a bit. But even then, right in the beginning, I thought of what's their distribution plan going to be, because we saw the distribution plan, what was there of the PPE, right, for tribes across the country. That wasn't too great. I mean, you heard Abigail Echo Hawk saying we requested the PPE and we got body bags, and I was like, oh, that was kind of surprising. and people who are wanting, or tribes that are wanting rapid test systems and rapid test kits. Those were kind of slow, and that was part of why people kept trying to, or kept trying, the virus kept spreading within tribal communities because there wasn't enough testing there, and it came along a little bit later, but it was very slow in that. So the hope is for a lot of tribes to get this vaccine as soon as they can. I know in the community here, where I'm at in Navajo Nation, they're already putting elders 65 and older as a priority for the vaccine within the local chapters. So it's neat to see that's going on. And they're trying to go door to door and just call people to say, do you have an elder lives with you, or can you bring them on this day at this time so they can receive the vaccine? So hopefully, tribes will be able to protect themselves that way. Got a slow start, but we'll see what happens in the future.
Huge challenges ahead, and we know you'll be reporting on it. So thank you very much, Jordan.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for watching. That's our slice of the Indigenous world today. I'm Mark Trahant. We'll see you tomorrow.
You got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run.
Indian Country Today is recorded at the Phoenix Indian School Visitor Center in Phoenix, Arizona.
This is Indian Country Today.